What's good, guys? I'm John the Chief, and for this video, it is gonna be my new Bloodied heavy build in Fallout 76, and this build is devastating in every situation. I have so much defense, so much survivability, but the best part is that it does an absurd amount of damage, where I was able, with this build, to kill the Wendigo Colossus by myself in under a minute. By myself, under a minute, I killed it without even trying. It was so easy, and that is the power that this build gives. So much defense for surviving any situation, but the damage to just wipe out everything in your path. So, link in the description down below if you guys need a copy for the perks, but I'm going to be explaining all the perks that I use and what you can swap them out for, because at the end of the day, you're going to be swapping out perks constantly in this game, depending on the situation. If you're going to a nuked area, you're going to be running Glow Sights 3 instead of some other perks. But if, say, Vault 94 was still open, you'd be running Exterminator 3 instead. If there was a lockpick that you need to go, you would swap those perks out for the 3 lockpick perks. Always, depending on the situation, you are going to be swapping out your perks, and I set this build so that way it's flexible. And the best part is that it can change into a good Bloodied melee build anytime. So my character is a Bloodied specialist, but it uses all heavy weapons, and it also uses unarmed melee weapons, both to a very high efficiency. Because of this build, all I do is swap out a couple of perks, and I am good to go. So we're gonna go and start off right away with the perks. This is gonna be my spread. I use 15 into strength, 3 into perception, 4 into endurance, 7 into charisma, 6 intelligence, 10 agility, and 11 luck. A lot of these perks I do rotate depending on my situation, but the idea for this build is that it's also flexible for turning into a Bloodied melee build when I want to play melee. So it's actually really useful. I just have to swap out a couple of the perks. Usually the ones in strength and agility are what's getting swapped out, and then I can change into a regular melee build, which is really good because melee is really powerful in this game. In a Bloody build, it's probably one of the best because of the way unyielding works, but this is my Bloodied heavy setup. So for the strength perks, we are going to be using 3 heavy gunner perks, so that way we can get 60% more damage with our heavy weapons. I use lock and load to get a faster reload speed, but depending on the situation, I might be running bandolier or some other carry weight perk. I also run traveling pharmacy because I carry way too many stim packs and Radaway diluteds on me, so this is actually really important to be running this perk. You can't have the chemist backpack because you're running power armor, so traveling pharmacy is basically a must. But if you don't actually carry too many chems, you can get rid of that and put the 3 strength into something else. So for perception, I'm going to be running Glow Sight 3, but the main reason for this is that way I could change into other perks. I usually run combinations of different things, like for example, when Vault 94 was a thing, I used to run 3 into Exterminator because since everything was an insect, I liked having extra armor penetration. But if I am, say, doing a nuked area and I'm trying to get some fluxes, I'm going to be running Green Thumb and Glow Sight 2. So it's all depending on the situation. And I like having 3 in the perception just so I can get to lockpick 3 by running all 3 lockpick perks, so that way I'm not cut out of any content. For endurance, I'm running Life Giver, which I just made a video on. If you wanted to, you could change up and add more to endurance, like if you wanted to add some. If you didn't need traveling pharmacy, I would recommend actually putting on 3 into fireproof, because fireproof is super good for avoiding some deaths. That extra resistance to explosions and flame attacks is so useful because explosions do a huge chunk of damage, and it's something that can instant kill you, which is one of the weaknesses to Life Giver, which if you watch my Life Giver video, you'll know that Life Giver is kind of broken in a Bloodied build. Then for charisma, we run Lone Wanderer because I'm a solo player, And then the next perk is usually something, again, that would change depending on the situation. usually I am running Suppressor, but if I'm trying to speed kill a boss like the Scorch Beast Queen, the Imposter Sheep Squatch, I'm going to be running Tenderizer instead, which will give me a bit of bonus damage. 7% actually does go a long way when you're using high fire rate weapons. It's like a free shot every 13 bullets or 14 bullets, so that's a bit of extra damage, and because of the way armor works, it's actually better in most situations. So I like running Tenderizer, but again, if I wasn't running Lone Wanderer, I'd probably be running Tenderizer 3, Suppressor 3, and Strange in Numbers if I was on a team. Now for Intelligence. This is subject to change, but I usually run both Nerd Rage, because we are going to be below 20% health all the time, because we're going to be activating our emergency protocols. We're going to be using Life Giver for health gating, and this will give us bonus damage, more damage resistance, and some AP regen, which is super useful because we're also going to be running a jetpack, because you can have both the jetpack and emergency protocols on your armor, and then Stabilize for that 45% armor penetration. So this is so useful. If you are going to get rid of one perk, I recommend actually getting rid of Nerd Rage while running heavy weapons, because the 45% armor penetration is a must-have. Armor penetration is so valuable in this game. If you're not running armor penetration, what are you doing? So I recommend Stabilize, and then if you want to change out Nerd Rage, I recommend getting batteries included. Also, I like having it above 5 just so I can always run Gunsmith perks and Demo Expert so I can craft anything that I need to. For Agility, now this again is subject to change. A lot of these perks I do change up depending on my situation. Through Hiker, because I carry way too much food and water, I don't like having to be starving or dehydrated in my game, because that does take a lot of your AP away, and I really don't like it. Adrenaline. A lot of the time, I'm going to be running either Adrenaline 5 or 1. Not much in between. So 1 gives you the bare minimum, and is actually really good for just 1 point. There's no build in the game where you shouldn't be running 1 into Adrenaline, because the amount of damage that you get from this for just 1 point is ridiculous. So I always recommend that. But if you're doing speed kills and depending on the situation, like a Scorch Beast Queen, 5 into Adrenaline, it's so easy to maintain the 60% damage bonus, and that goes a long way. That allows you to melt bosses in no time. As you can see in my video here, I've been killing bosses in no time at all. So that is one of the secrets, is Adrenaline. And then I put 2 points into Action Boy, because I just like getting faster AP regen. Plus, with the way it's going to be stacking with Nerd Rage and Lone Wanderer, you're going to be getting a lot more AP regen. Plus, the damage reductions is so nice. That's why I'm always running Lone Wanderer. But if you aren't, I actually recommend putting probably 1 into Adrenaline, and then I swap 3 into Action Boy, and then I'll put 3 into Dodgy. Dodgy allows you to take less damage, and then it'll be costing you action points. But you're not using VATS, and also you have 3 perks that increase your AP regen. So you will not be feeling it that much. It's a big layer of defense depending on your situation. This is really useful if you're playing co-op. So if you can't run Lone Wanderer, Dodgy is a really good one. You will be sacrificing some of that AP regen by running Lone Wanderer, but you're going to be making it up with some stats through Strange in Numbers and a Tenderizer. So that's why I recommend Through Hiker. Yeah, you know, the big deal. Now, Luck. I like running this amount because, it's flexible with a melee build. So I'm going to be running Bloody Mess for extra damage. The whole entire point of this build is just extra damage. I run way too many mutations, so having 3 into Class Freak just gives me a lot of extra special stats, which is super useful. 1 Gun Army. This perk is actually not necessary because most enemies you're going to be instant killing. They don't get a chance to stagger. Against big bosses too, you're going to be killing them pretty fast, and you really don't need to stagger them or do anything like this. So you don't really need this perk too much. It's only going to be useful against like Scorch Beast Queen the Wendigo Colossus, Imposter Sheep Squatch maybe. Just, there aren't too many enemies where this will be helping you. But I like having 11 into luck because I want to be able to swap this perk out for Serendipity when I swap over to my melee build, because when I use melee, I'm not in power armor. But Serendipity doesn't work in power armor, but this build is meant for power armor, so this gives me a lot of variables I can play around with. And anytime I want to swap over the melee, I can easily. That's the whole entire point about this. It's super flexible, super high damage, and it allows me to play multiple playstyles. So that's why I recommend this is my spread. And also, for my mutations, I'm going to be running these. The big one is Adrenal Reaction, Bird Bones. I use Carnivore, but you can use Herbivore if you prefer that, depending on how high your Settler's rep is. Chameleon. Chameleon is not useful at all, but it doesn't do anything, so there's no point in not having it. Eagle Eyes, Extra Perception. I like having Extra Perception all the time because it allows me to see targets from farther away. And again, a lot of these perks really don't do too much. Grounded might not be necessary. It depends on how many energy weapons you use, basically. That's the sole factor. If you use a lot of energy weapons like the Gatling Laser or Gatling Plasma or the Plasma Caster, don't run grounded because it's going to take away some of your damage. I use Healing Factor because that's what enables my Life Giver, and then Marsupial, Scale Skin, all this good stuff that actually helps out and keeps me flexible for my build. Now, for the gear that I like to use. I like to use Strangler Heart Power Armor. I actually grinded this out a long time ago, and it's actually devastatingly powerful for increasing your damage. It has a really high amount of defense naturally, so that is super good. It's probably the second best power armor in the game, or the best, depends on where you rank T65, because T65 has higher damage resistances and energy resistances, but Strangler Heart, its side effect where you put poison damage on enemies around you and you do poison damage with your guns, makes it so that way this armor is so much better for damage per second. If you're trying to kill bosses fast, this is the armor for you. And then, the big piece is that I'm running Emergency Protocols, which is probably one of the rarest plans to get for this armor because you need to be farming the Scorch Beast Queen to get Ultra Sight Emergency Protocol plans, and that's the only way to add it. You can't get the mods or anything else for this armor, and because you also can't trade this armor currently, you can't give it to someone who has the plan and craft it on for you and then give it back. No, you have to get the plan yourself for the same character that actually unlocks this armor. So it's gonna take a while to actually get all this stuff. If you don't want to grind out for Strangleheart Power Armor, I recommend just getting a T51 Power Armor and putting on Emergency Protocols. That's good enough. You'll get the job done. Maybe you'll put on a Ultra Sight right arm to add a jetpack to it, because it's nice having a jetpack and Emergency Protocols, and not every power armor allows you to put jetpack on the arms, and arms usually don't do anything for power armor that's really that useful, so we're just gonna put on jetpack for that. And then for the guns, we're gonna be using a Bloodied 50 cal. Now mine is actually not that special. I didn't get faster fire rate or explosive on my Bloodied 50 cal. It's just a Bloodied 50 cal with increased VATS hit chance, but I don't even use VATS that much with this build. So it's just a regular, basically 1-star Bloodied 50 cal, and that is what I use most of the time. I do have it primed so that way I do more damage, because it's really easy to create ammo. All you need is a couple of Violet Fluxes, and you can create a ton of ammo for the 50 cal. So I use that, but it's not necessary. A regular Bloodied 50 cal should be all you need, because it does so much damage in this build. Then I use a Bloodied Explosive LMG to finish off targets, or depending on how heavy the boss is, if it's like a Scorch Beast Queen, I usually like using the Bloodied Explosive LMG. The hard part about it is that it's kind of inaccurate, where it's hard to manage the recoil. So if it's a target that moves around a lot, like maybe a Sheep Squatch, the Assaultron Imposter, or maybe even the Wendigo Colossus, those move around a lot and it's hard to get consistent shots. So I would use a Bloody 50 cal most of the time, but against a Scorched Beast Queen, hands down, I'm using my Bloodied Explosive LMG. Now, this build is, again, just really good for endgame content. If you are trying to farm bosses that are really difficult, this is a go-to build. It allows you to survive in nuke zones and high radiation areas like Radiation Rumble, and also Vault 94 when it was open, and also for farming nuke zones and Wendigo Colossus. Since it runs power armor, you don't need to worry too much about the radiation. It has a lot of defense because of emergency protocols activating, and you're also health gating with Life Giver, so between both of those, it's really hard to die because you're constantly gonna be getting back to that 45 health, and the amount of damage that they have to do in order to kill you, going through your Lone Wanderer, your emergency protocols, all your defensive buffs, and also just the natural damage resistance and energy resistance of the power armor itself, it's not gonna kill you. It's gonna be basically impossible for you to die in most situations, unless they're using a poison effect or some type of damage over time, which will go through your defenses. I also like to carry around a lot of ballistic box on me because they increase my damage with these weapons, and I also carry around some psychotats to get extra damage depending on what I'm trying to deal. I also use VATS heavily and Recon on my helmet in order to actually just scope out the area and tell where all the enemies are. This is really useful for maintaining adrenaline stacks because you want to maintain all your stacks of adrenaline so that way you have max damage and you can be killing the bosses faster. This is how I was able to kill the Wendigo Colossus in under a minute by myself. I just want to repeat and go over everything again. The whole entire build is gonna be in the description down below. Just click on the link and it will tell you exactly the perk layout that you want to go through so that way you can play this exact same build. The weapons aren't too far out of reach. You really only need a Bloodied 1-star heavy weapon. Bloodied anything will work. Bloodied Gatling gun, Bloodied 50 cal, Bloodied Gatling lasers. All of that stuff will just be devastatingly powerful on this build. I just think the 50 cal and the LMG are by far the best heavy weapons in the game, so go for those two, but if you can't get it, no worries, just use whatever you got that's bloodied and it'll work out perfectly. And if the situation arises where you get some nice bloodied melee weapons, you can always swap out some perks and turn it into a very, very strong bloodied melee build. Anyways, hope all of you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and have a good day.